All right, so for today's notes, we're going to be talking about variability, shape, and relative frequency. So variability does have a definition that goes along with it. However, here's what I need you to know. If a situation has variability, that means there are multiple answers versus a situation where there's only one exact answer, that is without variability. So let's take a look at these examples. So the first one, the legal driving age in Texas. Well, right now that is 16. So that is one number, one answer. So that does not have variability. The number of countries in Europe. Well, once again, that is a set number. So it does not have variability. The price of a hotel room in downtown San Antonio. Well, we didn't specify what hotel, so it could be talking about any hotel, and we know all the prices are different, so that means it does have variability. Number of feet in a mile, that's one exact answer, so that does not have variability. Number of selfies taken each day, well, depends, so that's going to have variability. Number of text messages you send each day is also going to have variability. So once again, for variability, all you need to know is read the situation and figure out, do we have multiple answers or one exact? If we have one exact, it does not yield or have variability. All right, so now we have some definitions we need to write down. So we have cluster, data that are grouped together. A gap, the numbers that have no data value. The peak, which is the mode, are the most frequent values. Symmetry, the left and the right side look the same, meaning if I took the graph, drew a line straight down the middle, then they look the same on both sides. Skewed left slides to the left, and skewed right slides to the right. And we're going to help determine which way is skewed by looking for the tail. So all those vocabulary words are going to help us determine the shape of the graph. So if you need to pause the video, go ahead and do so. All right, so now I want us to label some of these vocabulary words that we talked about. So this first one here, I see highlighted, there are no data values on 19, 20, and 21. This is what's known as a gap. Okay, so once again, there's no data on those numbers. All right, the one next to it, if I take a line, draw it down the middle, I see they're the same on both sides. So this is an example of symmetry. If it was not symmetrical, we would say it's asymmetrical. All right, the next two are examples of how the graph is skewed. So what I said in the last slide was to follow the tail. So I'm going to draw a little line going down. Well, here's my tail here. What direction is the tail going? The tail is going to the right, so this is skewed right. All right, on the next one, I'm going to draw a little line following it. I see the tail is going to the left, so this is skewed left. All right, the next one, I see the highlighted box. All this data is grouped together. This is an example of a cluster. And the last one I see highlighted is the number 4. If I look, this one has the most dots, therefore 4 is the peak, or we would also say the mode. So basically, all you're doing for the shape is using these vocabulary words to describe the graphs. Now, I use dot plots in these examples. You can use histograms, bar graphs, stem and leaf plot, box plots, and percent bar graphs to describe the data here. All right, and the last thing we're going to talk about is relative frequency. So I forgot what the blanks mean, so we're just going to look at the example together. I think that's going to be a lot easier. So typically with relative frequency, you're given a table, and with that table, you need to make the numbers a percent. So I would recommend for relative frequency using a box problem. So for box problems, remember, 100 always goes in the bottom right, and we got to figure out the other info. Well, looking at this, I'm not given percent, so I know that's where my X is going to go. Let's start with Arabic. I see 2 students speak Arabic, so that's my part. But what is my whole? So in order to find out the whole, you have to add everything together, and you get 50. So we would say 2 out of 50, all right, speak Arabic. Now, I can solve the long way. I can cross multiply, divide, or I have a shortcut. How do we get from 50 to 100? Hopefully, if you said times 2, you are correct. So I can multiply 50 times 2 to get 100. Well, what I do to the bottom, I do to the top as well. 2 times 2 gives me 4. So that would give me 4%. So we would say 4% of students speak Arabic. All right, go ahead and pause the video and figure out the rest of the table on your own. All right, so hopefully you pause and you're going to see a pattern. Because it's out of 50, we're just going to multiply everything times 2. So I should get 30%, 12%, and 54%. And that's how you find relative frequency. Sometimes you may see it used with tally marks versus the numbers given to you. So just be prepared to make everything into a percent. All right, and the last thing we're going to talk about is a percent bar graph. So percent bar graph is made, let's see, sorry, I'm moving this over some. All right, it's made using percents. So the first thing we're going to have to do is determine the percent of each category. Well, I've already done that with this previous example. We had 4%, 30%, 12%, and 54%. Then we're going to make sure it adds up to 100%. It does. Trust me on that. Then we'll need to create a key. So what a percent bar graph looks like is we're going to fill in this graph using different colors or different shapes. Now, we have to have a key in order to read it. So if I make one, let's use red for Arabic, orange for French, yellow for German, and green for Spanish. So I want to make sure my percent bar graph is set up here. So I'm going to start at 0% and go all the way to 100%. Then create your number line by using tens. Mine maybe look a little off because I'm doing this on computer versus paper. All right, now everything is labeled. I have my key. Let's start filling this bar graph in. Now, I would suggest you start with a nice easy number, typically ending in a 0 or a 5. So I'm going to start with French, which was orange, and at 30%. So I'm going to go over here to the 30%, and I'm going to draw a line above it using my orange, and I'm going to fill this in. Okay, this tells me that 30% of the students speak French. Now, I'm going to do German next. Now, German is 12%. I do not start back at the beginning. I'm going to keep adding on from what I've already done. So if I do 12%, that's going to be a little, so 30 plus 12 gives me 42. So that's going to be a little after the 40. So I'm going to fill this in. Now, because of where the graph starts, I am not saying this is 42%. Okay, I had to add on from the 30 to fill in this entire graph. So we would say still German is 12%. Now let's do Spanish. So if I add 42 plus 54, that's going to take me all the way down here to about 96. Let me use the correct color though. And then I'm going to fill this in. And then last I have Arabic, which is about 4%. So if I'm about here at 96, plus 4 goes to 100. So looking at my graph, I see this goes all the way to 100%, which means it adds up correctly. And I have all 4 languages being represented by their colors. So where people have confusion with the percent bar graph, once again, is for Arabic, for example. We see it goes to the 100. They may say, oh, it's 100%. Well, if I look at the graph here, it doesn't start all the way at 0. It starts here about 96. So with percent bar graphs, sometimes if you're not given the numbers ahead of time, you may think it's a little inaccurate. All right, let's try an example on your own. All right, try this problem on your own. You're seeing which percent bar graph represents the data. Go ahead and pause the video. All right, so hopefully you paused the video. The first thing I would do in this is make your relative frequency table here into percent. So if I set up my box problem, I have to add all this up. I get 25. And if I start with the live viewing method, 8 out of 25 viewed it that way. Well, I see to get from 25 to 100, I'm going to multiply by 4. So I can do the same to the top, which would give me 32%. So my pattern throughout this is going to be times 4, so this will be 36, 12, and 20. So now let's figure out which answer choice matches these percents. So for live, it's going to be the white bar, and I see 32%. So ask yourself, should it be exactly on 32, before 30, or, sorry, should it be exactly on 30, before 30, or a little past 30? Hopefully you said a little past 30. So that gets rid of B, because if I look, it's exactly to 30. And it gets rid of C, which is way before 30. Now the next bar is 36%. So that means when I look at the end of the gray, it should be somewhere closer to the 70% because 32 plus 36 is going to take you that far down. So if I look, yeah, A looks kind of right. But if I look at D, this is really short for 36%. So that tells me that is not correct. So the only correct answer is A. All right, if y'all have any questions, remember tutorings are on Mondays from 2 to 2:45. Y'all have a nice day. That's the end of our notes.